Their son was found hanged in a Mississippi jail. Let me ask you right now, what were the circumstances surrounding this? You know that they told you it was suicide. He was found hanged by shoestrings. Why was he even in jail?
On the night of August the 22nd, 1992, we received a visit from a Jackson police officer at about 12:40 a.m. And of course, he had informed us that he had a message for Esther. Previously, we received a call from a young lady that was with Andre. They had just left home. They had been out for a date to the movies, and he stopped briefly before he was scheduled to take her home because she had a curfew that night. She called and, of course, informed us that Andre had been arrested. And we asked her, did she know why? And, of course, she said that she could not give us that information. She just knew that they were stopped at a road stop. And, of course, later, Andre called and said that he was arrested. When we inquired at the Brandon police station, they said that they couldn't give us any information in regards to the charges.
Now, Andre was 19 at the time. He tells you, you know, he's arrested. Did he sound upset? Did he sound like, you know, he was totally depressed, Esther?
No, he did not. I talked with him twice that morning when he was arrested, and you know, there was no indication that he was upset in any way.
He was starting college in 2 days, was that right?
That's correct. Actually, it was the very next day he was supposed to be attending college, enrolling, yes.
So you've talked to him twice that day. You don't know why he's been arrested yet?
No.
Okay. Don't know why he's arrested. Yeah.
Let me interrupt. We talked with him. I talked with him very early during that day, and throughout the day, I, you know, talked with him several times.
So you were going down to bail him out the next day?
We were working with the local authorities to see how soon we could get him released.
Because you still don't even know why he's there.
That's correct.
The other aspect of the case was that Andre was moved from the Brandon police station to the Simpson County police station, which is 40 miles south of Jackson. And of course, when we inquired about Andre's charges, they informed us that we had to contact the Brandon Police Department since they were the arresting officers.
So it's this back and forth, and then you're notified that your son is dead.
That's correct.
But it was 12 hours after his death.
Within 19 hours, he was dead. We were contacted around 12:40 a.m. by a Jackson police officer. And of course, the way we were contacted is even questionable.
I'm standing here thinking to myself, I mean, your son goes out for a date, and the next thing you know, you find he's arrested, you don't know why, and then he's dead. You know in your heart, in your gut, that this could not be true. But you've also hired people to give you physical evidence, and I'm going to talk to them in a minute because they're here. But what were you told by the officials there?
After the police officer arrived at our home and asked to talk with me, to speak with me, he only said that he handed me a piece of paper with just a phone number, and I was asked to call the Simpson County Jail. I immediately called the Simpson County Jail, and I was casually informed. It was, you know, that my son had committed suicide. It was as though they were not even, they were talking about someone that I, you know, wouldn't even know of, but they were relating this fact to me.
How did you respond at that point?
Well, I couldn't continue the conversation. I had to, you know, call for my husband to come and to continue to talk with him.
Did you believe it?
No, it was on, you know, I was just in total shock.
Did you think at that point that they've got the wrong child? This couldn't be?
Well, I was just totally shocked and just totally, you know, unbelievable that this could happen.
I have to take a break here, but before I do, I want to know from you, just tell me what your son was like.
Andre was, you stated earlier, 19, but he was actually 18 at the time of his death. He had just graduated from high school in May of 92, you know, that year of 92, and he were a very outgoing type of, independent type of, you know, child. He was very, you know, loving and respectful, and he was, you know, getting ready to attend college.
Into any trouble?
No trouble. No
Ever
trouble.
any run-ins with the law?
No. And
you stated that he was taking the young woman home to meet her curfew, so we know he was mannerable.
That's correct. And
I should also say here, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. And he was planning, as you know, as you stated earlier, to attend college the very next day, and he was very talented with his hands and skills, so therefore he was going to major in engineering.
In engineering?
Right.
Okay. God only knows what he would have been doing for us now. I should also state here that you are the local president of the NAACP, is that right?
That's correct.
And you're a minister in the Nation of Islam.
Yes, that's correct.
And we don't know what those factors, how they played in. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We're also going to talk to a pathologist that the family hired and their attorney, because there's a lawsuit involved, and we'll find out why after this. And that's the way we see it. Let me come back to the Quins and ask you, why do you think this is happening?
Well, I believe that they have discovered that this type of crime can be easily covered. When we looked at the cases prior to our son's death, we saw a pattern. Of course, each person had been arrested, and within 24 hours or very shortly after that period, they were found dead. And of course, they were either found dead saying that they committed suicide with a part of their clothing, either with a belt or a pants leg. And of course, this indicated that evidently they had discovered a way to murder people without it being challenged at all, knowing that the family would be overwhelmed with grief and would not know what to do to challenge the death of their loved one.
That sounds like similar in your situation, that they've given you all these things, fly you out, oh, here's a body, look at it, and you're going to think of everything else but say, somebody murdered my child. Let me talk to the pathologist that you've hired, because you were not satisfied with the findings, obviously. This is Dr. James Bryant, pathologist that you hired, and you said that this could not be suicide. Why not?
That's correct. It relates to the ligature markings that I found around the neck.
Ligature markings are the
marks that are left by the supposed suicide instrument.
Okay.
And what I found was that the ligature mark was completely around the neck, and there was no knot.
Okay, so if this had been a hanging, then this would have knotted back here and one mark there.
That's one way. That's correct.
Okay, but you found what?
I found that the ligature mark was completely around the neck in this fashion, a little bit of a crisscross in the back, but no knot.
Indicating the strangulation.
Right. Somebody from behind and looping it around the neck and pressing on it without tying it.
Why would the coroner there, I mean, why would they say otherwise?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
You know, they may just have a lot of work and just writing it off real fast.
We hear a lot of cases on this show, actually, that coroners are sometimes sloppy. And I found out that these are not people who are hired or appointed or have all this, training. Coroners are sometimes elected officials, is that right?
A coroner is an elected official comparable to a sheriff, and they can come from any walk of life.
See, we all think it's like Quincy. So they could be elected, they could be a sheriff, they could have been a sheriff before. And then
I know one like that.
You know one?
He was a deputy sheriff, now he's a coroner.
So then these people find these things and they say, then this is what I found and this is accurate.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And then they go on to the next case.
Any other indications that this was not suicide?
Well, as Mr. and Mrs. Quinn stated, there's no background that would indicate any psychiatric disturbance that would lead to a suicide. And in fact, he was going forward with his life. He was going to start college the next day. He was out on a date that night. There's just nothing in any kind of psychiatric background that would indicate to me a precedent for a suicide.
Okay. Also with this is their attorney, Delano Funches. You are filing suit?
Yes, a suit has been filed. The Quinns initially asked the state's attorney general to appoint a special prosecutor. This request was denied. At that point, the Quinns decided to pursue the matter civilly.
So there's a civil suit filed against whom?
The Simpson County as well as Brandon.
And what is the suit for?
The suit is to actually determine, well, they're claiming that it was a suicide. The Quinns are saying that it was a murder. This is the only way that they can have their rights addressed in this matter.
So this is not a suit to try to get something, it's just a suit to try to get the case open and get some information.
That's correct. Let me add that when we recognize that the officials that we appealed to had considered our case an open and closed case, we looked at what alternatives did we have. And of course, we discovered that the only way we could continue to pursue this case was to file a civil suit, because we know that our son was murdered in that jail.
80 other families in their similar situation. How many others in yours?
Well, at the present time Andre was murdered, it was 47. That number has increased. I think it's standing at about 50 men and women who have been murdered in various jails under the guise of alleged suicide. Okay,
we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, lots of questions. Yes, sir. Can you stand, please?
Yes, I'd like to know if the race of the girl and the race of the police officers.
Which girl?
The girl that was with their
that your
boy
son was dating.
Yeah, that was committed suicide in jail. What was her race?
She was black.
Okay.
And the police officers, they were white or black?
Was Caucasian.
Caucasian. And was there? Did you find that the Ku Klux Klan was involved in this in any way?
Well, the pattern that has existed in Mississippi is a pattern that has to be looked at, especially the area where my son was taken. It has a long history of racial confrontation as well as abuse and brutality.
Do you think your political and religious affiliation has fed into this at all?
Well, we're not naive to the fact that that could be a possibility, but when we look at all the other cases and see the pattern, we also recognize that race don't necessarily have to be a motive or our political or community involvement, because we noticed that there were black males, black females, white males as well that is a part of that number.
Similar things happen. Yes. Yes, please.
Anyone that's had any type of infraction with the law knows that they make a point of taking a belt, shoestrings, anything sharp away from them. What kind of shoestring would have it been to hold a man up and say he hung himself with it?
Very good question.
That was an insult to our intelligence to present that scenario in the case of our son. When we arrived at that jail, they showed us photographs, and we were not permitted to see our son's body to verify if it was in fact our son. And of course, that also indicated that something terribly wrong has occurred in that particular jail.
With the pictures that you saw, were there bruises or any other things on the body?
Yes.
Yes.
My question is for the first family.
How do you grieve? Can you?
we have not been allowed to grieve in our case. From the moment we were told that our son committed suicide, we knew differently. We know that our son was murdered. And this has been an ongoing, very extremely depressing situation for us, and it has disabled us to continue to move forward with our lives. And we know that the only way we can find peace, and hopefully that our son may rest in peace, is to see that he is vindicated for that.
You're a private investigator, see many cases like this. When families first come to you, I'm sure you have to be a little cynical. Do you start off with the assumption that these people are grieving, they can't get over it, they can't accept it as suicide, or what do you think?
I've seen the government do this over and over again. This is pathetic. In the case of these families here, the first two, Joanne and Jack and Esther and Charles, they're doing everything that's right. You have to keep hanging in there. It takes forever. And keep pushing them. In the case of Wilma and Bill, don't give up. The truth is awesome. And sometimes it takes a decade to win something like this. It's not unusual, you know, in the circumstance here where you've got attorneys and pathologists and investigators, you might even have to wait for a new regime to be elected to find out what the old regime did. But do not give up.
So sometimes it's political when someone says that this is what it was and then they just can't let go because of saving face?
When was the last time anybody in our government ever decided to say they were wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't tell me something now. You must keep pushing. If you don't push them
But the McCaskills have spent $50,000 investigating. I mean, how do families do this?
You have to keep working. It takes away everything. It consumes your time. It consumes your finances. Your every living, waking hour, and you can't give up. You wind up making allegations against various people that you can't walk away from. If you don't prove what you have to say, you're beaten and you can't sleep with it. You know.
Okay, the Ferguson says, and I'm sure all of these families are this way. They all have friends and family members who feel the same way. What can we do as a community to raise our voices to say something's got to change?
The important thing is get all the information, and there a letter writing campaign. Contact your congressmen, your senators. Drive everybody nuts. These people are there to take our paychecks that we pay them. They can darn well answer the phone when we call them.
Okay, we're going to be back to give you 5 tips if there's a situation